Well, let's go back now to our top story. And parents are being urged to be vigilant and to look out for symptoms of Strep A infection in their children. It comes after the deaths of at least 6 people under the age of 10. So joining me now is an expert in infectious disease control, Dr. Bharat Pankhania from the University of Exeter. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much for talking to us this morning. How worrying are these cases of Strep A?
Whilst it is very concerning and that the numbers 6 who have died compared to 4 last year, this is a very rare occurrence, and I wouldn't want parents to be unduly worried. So how do you stop being worried? I would say, well, better you know about the signs and symptoms. And these are, because at this time of the year, you often mix them up with viral throat infections. So let me just narrate them for you. It's tender, painful nodes in the neck, a very painful throat, inflamed tonsils with maybe exudates on it, little red petechiae, little red spots at the top of the roof of your mouth. And interestingly, of course, you'll also have a fever greater than 38 degrees and generally unwell, aching limbs, muscles, etc. And to distinguish it from a viral infection, you wouldn't have that cough, runny nose, or red eye. So that's the way to sort of say, okay, is this viral or is this bacterial? And if it is bacterial, of course, we can treat it with antibiotics.
That's incredibly useful advice. Thanks so much for that. And what's your take on why this might be happening now? There's been a suggestion that lockdown has meant that children's immunity is perhaps a little bit lower because they weren't being socialised for such a long time. Is that something that you think is possible?
So I have been thinking about this, and I need to be honest. I think we need to discuss this, and my thoughts are not about reduced immunity, but more a case of, are GPs not seeing these cases soon enough, and are they being discounted probably as viral and therefore antibiotics not given earlier? So my thinking is not about the immunity, because I haven't got any evidence for this, but could it be that perhaps we need to be a little bit easier on giving the antibiotics rather than saying it is probably viral, no antibiotics needed?
That's interesting. And you've told us what people have to look out for, but there are other issues as well that people have to be aware of as well, aren't there? And that is a rise in flu cases, widespread, but obviously children being affected too.
Indeed, and unlike streptococcal group A infections, seasonal influenza is eminently preventable. And I would urge people that if you haven't yet been immunized, and we've got widespread flu circulating now in the UK, it is still time to get yourself immunized. Children and adults and vulnerable people and people who are not entitled to the free vaccine, you can still go to a local pharmacist and get the influenza vaccine. Prevention is much better than being ill.
That's right. And parents of children under the age of 5 are particularly being urged to vaccinate their children, aren't they? And meanwhile, we've got this other threat, which is COVID, of course, one that we've become used to. But we have seen, I think it's the first rise in cases in England since mid-October. Should we be worried about that, or is that to be expected as the weather gets colder and we spend more time together indoors?
It is to be expected because we are more indoors as the temperature outside goes down. And also we have got gatherings. So at the moment we've got the Winter World Cup. So there will be people gathering in crowded pubs and places like that to watch the football together. Now, the key point there is be careful. So if the place is overly crowded with poor ventilation, perhaps you want to go to another place where it is not so crowded and better ventilated. And of course, COVID-19 is also preventable to an extent if you have those vaccines. So if you're due one, please take it. Prevention is better than the illness.
Well, Bharat Pankhania, all very useful advice this morning. Thanks so much for joining us and taking us through all of that. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.